And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about the 1982 film The Entity, directed by Sidney J. Furie, and starring Barbara Hershey. So this is the second time I've seen this film. I look back on my spreadsheet, and the last time I saw it was in 2010. Like a day after we saw For Color Girls, so I don't think you were paying any kind of attention. But
I saw this movie as well?
I'm not sure, but
I don't recall.
Anyway, this is the new Blu-ray put out by Shout Factory. Street date was June 11th, so we're just a little bit behind. But yeah, so impressions. It's based on a true story.
It's based on a true story about a woman named Doris Bither who lived in Culver City, California, so not far from here, in the early 70s.
76.
76? Okay. Oh, so mid-70s. Whatever. So I was reading about her a little bit, and she differs from the character in the film in that she had 4 children, not 3. And she did have like parapsychologists come visit her and try to capture imagery of the entity that was haunting her or attacking her. And they supposedly did take images that had like halos and blips in the photos, whatever. But one thing that was remarkable about her is that her living conditions were like just the worst. Like her home had been condemned twice.
Oh. So
of course people would speculate that maybe what she was experiencing was due to like mental health.
Mm-hmm. So she wasn't a single mother trying to go to school as a typist living in El Segundo, as seen in the film.
So Barbara Hershey, we find her she's in school learning to type, because back then that would have been like a very good job for a single mother to have. But she lives in a beautiful home in El Segundo that she's renting, and she's late on the payment. And right away, she is sexually assaulted.
Oh yeah, it starts out. I mean, the film is the film when it was released, it wasn't really that well received, but it kind of has a cult following. And like Scorsese, I know, is a fan of the film.
He said it was like Didn't someone make some outrageous claim about this film?
I think I haven't watched the clip of him talking about it, but he said he considered it one of the most terrifying films or something of that nature. The rape scenes with the entity are disturbing, but I think...
Well, first off, let's describe the story. So it starts off with her in school, pretty, cut to her returning home from school, and is preparing for bed and gets punched and raped by an entity. And then it happens again the next day.
It's about to happen again, and she drags the children out of her home and goes to her best friend's house.
So the first time it happens, the children are at home, so they hear her screaming. Her older son comes in and comforts her.
But thinks that she's dreaming.
And she has an older son who appears to be 16.
Yeah, I wrote down do they have different dads? Which they do.
They do have different dads. So she has her older son who appears to be 16 from her first husband, and then who died, and her 2 younger daughters are from another man who she did not marry. They look very different. The son from the younger daughters. I was reading also that this film originally, the script had sort of an incestuous undertone between her, Barbara Hershey, and her
son. They do touch on that.
They do touch on it a little bit. But so the first time she's assaulted, he comforts her. The younger daughters are very upset. The next day, it begins to happen again, but she escapes and takes her children and herself to her best friend's house, who is a lovely woman.
Married to
an
asshole.
Yeah, married to an asshole, which I thought, throughout this movie, I felt like no one was able to have a discreet conversation.
Right.
Like a lot of things were happening just for everyone to hear.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we find out pretty quickly that her best friend is not going to be, like, her best friend's place is not a place she can find refuge. So then her best friend recommends she goes to like a walk-in clinic for psychiatric
Care.
evaluation or care. She does, and she meets the psychiatrist played by
Ron Silver.
Ron Silver.
Who always seems like a very sinister version of Al Pacino.
Oh yeah, he does look. I thought he was handsome.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of big in the 80s, 90s.
And his demeanor worked for me.
Yeah, he's fine. He's sympathetic and logical, yeah.
So obviously he believes that she is sort of having nightmares or is perhaps delusional due to stress, and sort of commits to her that, like, if she puts in the work, he can help her. She goes home, is assaulted again. She gives us some background on her, like, previous relationships. So she became pregnant at 16 with her first husband, who was also 16.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she produced her attractive older son.
Mm-hmm.
And then he died. She meets an older man.
Who's like her father.
Who's like a father figure. And then she also reveals that she was molested as a child by her father. So after a few visits with the psychiatrist, she is then seen by, like, the staff.
Well, yeah, which I thought was
like the psychiatry staff. So several psychiatrists are in a room with her asking her questions.
Which I thought was an interesting scene because it's very shady because they can't remember the name of any three of the people that she's been sexual with, including her current boyfriends.
Well, that scene in general is very interesting, which we can talk about in a second. But after she leaves that session with all of the psychiatrists, they pretty much have her figured out as a woman who's, like, sexually repressed, and, like, perhaps this entity is like a manifestation of her desire to have, like, an adult sexual relationship. Mm-hmm. So they have her totally figured out. They obviously don't believe she's being raped and attacked sexually by
three entities.
Because she says that one of them is bigger and stronger, and then there are two that are
little ones
holding
her legs apart. Yeah.
So they don't believe her. She can feel that. So I don't remember how she gets in contact with the parapsychologist.
By accident in a bookstore, she's looking at stuff.
That's right.
A cult, and she overhears these two parapsychologists talking. And then brings them to her house.
Which is very much like, what's the movie? Insidious.
Well, that was my big note on this, is Barbara Hershey, who's in Insidious.
That's right, she is in Insidious.
James Wan took a lot from, I think, the entity, especially with the two parapsychologists and the older woman that kind of runs them.
Yes.
Which would be the dynamic with Lynn Shay in the Insidious films.
Yes. But James Wan did a better job.
Well, yes, of course.
Ultimately, I felt like this movie was quite boring, considering the subject matter and sort of like the extreme violence that happens right away. Mm-hmm. So I was excited until I realized, like, oh, it's
just long talks about
just lots of talking and nothing happening, and then every now and then she gets raped.
Well, and it ends with, like, she moves to Texas, they tell us in the credits, and it's still happening.
And it's still happening. That's frequent. But anyway, so the parapsychologists visit with her, and they do experience something. So they believe her. Like, they witness something, but then the head of their little group...
They take a picture, and it's the electricity happening.
Right. And so the head says that we need to have concrete evidence in order to, like, present this as something that's real. So they, like, come up with this elaborate, like...
Well, first she goes back to the house with them, and they see, like, something again. Like, when I wrote down, it looked like a aurora borealis, like this green lights. And then they agree to go ahead with this grand experiment where they...
Which is like at UCLA, is that where they are? Do they tell us where?
I'm not sure if they tell us where.
Whatever. They're at an educational institution where they have a lot of money because they have this huge facility where they can build a replica of her home.
with affixed with like helium.
And they decide that they're going to capture the entity by freezing it with helium, which they go through like a pretty in-depth explanation of how that works. And then they have like
because it has mass, because they believe it has mass, because they can see it, then they can freeze it.
Right. So their plan is to freeze the entity. They have this really elaborate setup where this like robotic arm can move throughout the house and basically shoot whatever it needs to with the helium. And to protect Carla, Barbara Hershey, they build like a safe corner for her. But they also go into great detail about how it can protect her from the helium. So she goes there. The intention, I think, is for her to spend the night, and at some point during the night, the entity will come. The entity arrives. The entity takes over the setup, and basically it starts attacking her with the helium. And the safe space they built for her was not sufficient. It's not so safe. So in the end, the helium does freeze the entity.
And it becomes like an iceberg.
It becomes a big ass. It looks like the Matterhorn in Disneyland, like just this huge ice sculpture, but it's able to break out of it. So they ultimately were not able to capture it beyond just a moment. Also, while this is happening, her psychiatrist and because I think the psychiatrist who was seeing her was a resident. So he's still in residence.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because his boss shows up. At
his attending staff, shows up as well, and they're very skeptical.
And won't admit that they saw anything.
And in the very end, they won't admit they saw something. Well, the head, the attending psychiatrist, won't admit he saw something, and that's kind of how it ends. And then she drives off to Texas.
Yeah.
So I thought this movie was well done.
And, I've seen before, and as I was watching, I'm like, God, it looks like a Brian De Palma film. And come to find that it's shot by Stephen, I can't remember, Berman, who ended up being De Palma's cinematographer after this on Body Double in '84, and then on many subsequent features afterward. But it looks beautiful there, and I love all the shots where there's a close-up in the foreground and somebody in the background, and you catch a lot of details like Ron Silver's class ring. Yeah. I don't know. It looks great.
It looks good. Barbara Hershey's beautiful.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
She's beautiful. I really liked seeing her on screen. I did have a few issues there. She gets really upset at the doctor for thinking she thinks she wants to sleep with her son.
Yeah, he suggests that, and that's their falling out.
And I don't really understand how he got to that conclusion.
It was a really muddled conversation because he was, pushing her too hard, and he was talking about the presence of the little demons or entities.
That's right. So he challenged her by saying that if the entity is so strong as she describes it, then why does he need two little helpers? Right. But I did think that was a big jump from having two little helpers to you want to fuck your son.
Yeah.
So I thought obviously this movie's taking a lot of liberties, but that kind of threw me off a little bit because aside from that, I thought the care he was providing her and his demeanor, like whoever wrote that character did a good job of, and then the actor did a good job of portraying the psychiatrist in a way that seemed believable. I also felt a little confused, or just I didn't believe why he cared for her so much.
Oh yeah,
I feel like his concern for her extended beyond like doctor-patient, like a standard doctor-patient.
Well, you're made to believe that he has romantic feelings for her.
I guess I just didn't understand why.
Well, because she's beautiful.
Because then in that case, I feel like it's inappropriate. And I don't want to believe that his intentions were based on something inappropriate. Because I do think he was really, based on his knowledge.
Well, I think at least presented in this film, like based on a woman that looks like that saying what she says, I think he goes along with it. Like if she was a homely woman, I think they would have thought, because he threatens her at one point. He says because there was an incident where the demon took control of the car and she almost dies, and he said that could be seen as a suicide attempt and we could lock you up. I think if she was an attractive woman, they would have simply treated her like that. So I think he has an interest in her.
Sure. But, well, yeah, because the very first time he sees her as a patient, he gives her a ride home.
Mm-hmm. No,
or is it the second time?
She takes a taxi.
So the second time.
Yeah.
So the second time she visits with him, that we see, he notices she's waiting like in the lobby for her cab, and the cab never arrives. So he offers her a ride home, and then he asks to go inside to kind of witness it, and he immediately walks in and says, "There's nothing here."
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
And then she whispers as he gets back in his car, she's like, "There's still something here."
Yeah. I thought Barbara Hershey did a really good job.
She did a good job.
Like, she was acting really hard.
I think the rape scene, it's mostly the soundtrack by Charlie Bernstein. That pounding, which is...
Oh, I did notate that music, every time the entity arrives, was interesting. It almost felt like the intro to like a really awesome like dance song is about.
Yeah, well, but it does heighten the sensation, and I think Tarantino sampled that from Glorious Bastards.
Oh, okay.
As well, but and then when you start seeing more explicit things like the hands that are grabbing her breasts,
So I also read that Barbara Hershey had reservations about taking this role because of the nudity, but she was assured that there would be a body double. So when we see her in the shower, it's not her. And then the scene where there are two scenes where she's on the bed nude, mm-hmm. and you can see the entity grabbing her, like there are like depressions in her skin, like in her breasts and her torso. That's a prop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can kind of tell in one scene where it's like her head.
Yeah, you can kind of. I thought that was really well done.
It is, yeah.
But I don't think this is a horror film.
No, so Sidney J. Furie, who started in the 50s, and he still is making films, is best known for, God, I'm blanking on the title, with Diana Ross.
Mahogany?
No.
Lady Sings the Blues.
Lady Sings the Blues, which has one of the best opening sequences ever, I think. So Sidney J. Furie did that. He did The Taking of Beverly Hills, which samples Janet Jackson in the late 80s. He's been around, he's done a variety of things, but this couldn't be more different than Lady Sings the Blues, really. But he has said that he does not see this as a horror film.
Okay, good.
And that wasn't his approach.
I can see how the studio would market it as such, but...
Well, you can look at the...
Yeah, and also I think Poltergeist and...
Well, Amityville Horror was 79.
This was 83?
This was 82. So this was kind of in...
What was Poltergeist?
Poltergeist was 86, I think.
Oh.
So these things were in vogue. Amityville Horror is also based on the files of the Warrens, the couple played by Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, and James Wan's other films. But this has been, despite the following, the legacy it kind of has, this is the first real kind of beautiful presentation of this film, because I have it on Region 2, an old British DVD. That's how I had to see it before I had to buy this from the UK. But
well, now we have two of them.
Well, and it's based on a book by Frank De Felitta, which was made by Robert Wise in the late 70s with Anthony Hopkins and Marsha Mason, which is also a tale that was in vogue of, I think, reincarnation. So all of these things were kind of, it feels very much of a film of this period, because it's not something that can be made logically now, I think.
Why not?
The fact that anybody's saying that they're being raped by a demon or an entity.
Okay. I mean...
Is a true story, based on a true story. I don't know.
Oh, okay, yes, sure.
And how things are photographed and documented.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think if a person is into paranormal activity, and I could see how this might be a little creepy, but I think because the scenes where she sexually assaulted her, so I don't want to say over the top, but in contrast to the meat of the film, it just seems so extreme to then come down to
they did this grand experiment and then she just moves to Texas.
Right, but even her how long was this movie?
It was 125 minutes. It does feel very long.
It feels long, but also when I think about it, it seems like it just zips by. Like she's experiencing these things. She's like, you know, she visits with her best friend a couple of times, visits with the doctor a few times, and then
and then the parapsychologist,
and then they come to the house a couple of times, and then next thing you know, she's doing this grand experiment. So it does move along quite quickly, but it feels very uneventful.
Because
considering
it's very
what's happening to her.
It's very repetitive.
It is. I think that's another. Yeah, that's an issue too. Like she's. I hate to say like we get it, but you know the rape scenes are like very similar, and it's very obvious that they're coming. So and
this also isn't the only film from the '80s about an entity raping people. And do you remember watching The Incubus, which we also own?
Kind of.
John Cassavetes, where there's all these, I think it's New York City, I'm not sure, but all these women are being like, bruised, like very, like they're being ripped apart by their vaginas.
Yes, I do recall that, yes.
Which I almost find more entertaining than this.
Speaking of being boring, even at the very end, like the final scene where they're about to capture the entity, which I thought for sure was going to play out so much better than it did, when the helium system, when the system that's operating the helium goes literally haywire, everyone in the control room, the two psychiatrists, the skeptical psychiatrist, the three paranormal scientists, they're like cool as cucumbers.
Oh yeah.
She's running around like...
Yeah, it's Ron Silver that runs in and gets her.
Yeah. Like it just, I don't know, that played into like, to me, how kind of dry it was. I'm assuming it was, you know, knowing that the director said it wasn't a horror film, kind of makes sense that it wasn't trying to be overly sensational. But it still needs to be somewhat dramatic.
Yeah.
It didn't really...
It felt like a case study.
Because even her children, like, they would be deeply affected by what's happening. And we really get a very narrow view.
You don't get anything in the girls.
Well, what we do get in the girls, like, towards the end... Well, not towards the end. After she's already experienced this twice and they've witnessed it, her children, when they come home while she's with the psychiatrist... They're just like happy to have ice cream, and
yeah, they're pretty.
I would think those girls would be fucked up, but
well, even her son, just like even at one point she asked him, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "If I'm okay, you're okay."
Well, I mean, I guess they were doing the best they could. I do think it's a well-written story. I guess it's just kind of boring, and maybe because of the year it was made, they felt like they were already going past the line of like decency, so they couldn't get too crazy. But yeah, if a person is into paranormal activity and likes Barbara Hershey, I feel like this.
Oh yeah, for sure. If you're a Barbara Hershey fan,
she's great. She looks great.
I mean, a couple times I thought of Sigourney Weaver. A likeness.
She did remind me of someone, not Sigourney, but yeah, I hated her bangs or whatever she was doing with that hair at the top of her head. But she's beautiful. She's a great actor.
Yeah.
And she was really acting hard in this.
She was giving it to you, yeah.
She really was. So out of 5?
Like 2.5.
I was going to say 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, I guess till next time.